Hello and welcome back to Impact Talk with me, Thembekile Mrototo. Today we are focusing on AI and its spread basically within the healthcare space in South Africa, the footprint of artificial intelligence in healthcare. And who better than Vukosi Sambo, head of data and AI at AfroCentric Group, to help us understand how that part of the world is basically applying all this new technology that we're learning about to better provide healthcare services. Vukosi, welcome to AI Impact Talk.
Thanks, Thembekile. Thanks for having me.
AI and healthcare, how does AfroCentric Group then bridge those two worlds?
So look, I think firstly, if you look at the South African healthcare system and particularly the private sector, we've got about 9 million people that enjoy the cover, which is 14% of the population. So you can understand the burden firstly on the public side of things, right? And in terms of what the key challenges are, I'll summarize the three top pain points. One is the burden of disease. We are seeing an increasingly sickly population. And when you combine that with the fact that the healthcare inflation itself is worsening over time, far above the normal CPI, you are ending up in a situation of what you can call unsustainability in terms of affordability of care, which is compromising access, because already you can see it even in the gap of the 9 million versus the 16 million employed. So there could potentially be another 7 that should be having medical aid.
In there.
I'm not sure. I'll double check. I've got the data, remember. I'm the data guy.
So then tell me then, from the data, how do you take that data? And obviously you guys are running a business, right?
Yes.
Use it to your advantage as a business, but also to better the experience of your service for the South Africans in the millions who rely on you.
Yeah. So as a result, when you look at these challenges, our business model is sort of centered around addressing them in terms of we want to then lower the cost of care so that obviously more and more people can get into the system. We want to improve the outcomes so that we kind of like work backwards that impact of the burden of disease that I said is worsening. And we want your experience when you engage with these products to be as seamless and great, obviously. And obviously, there are stakeholders in the system because actually, if you look at us, we don't provide care. Doctors and hospitals provide care. We enable access to that care. And our enablement needs to be one that sends you to the best doctor who's the most cost-effective, will give you the best treatment with the best outcome in the most efficient way, and everyone wins in that kind of a transaction.
And it goes to as even a basic level because it does it not as the processing of something as simple as a script. Many of us come from the era where a doctor had to write it out by hand. You couldn't read it. You'd get to a pharmacy and hope the person on the other side of the counter is actually able to make out the handwriting. But you've changed that. We've
changed a lot of that. So if you look at our business, particularly at AfroCentric, we've got 3.9 million lives that we look after. So it's almost 40% of that 9 million that I spoke about. So we're quite a significant or big player between us and Discovery, you'll say. So if you look at the number of claim lines that we process monthly, that's excess of 12 million claim lines. Of which
you've got very sick customers.
I spoke about the burden of disease, but yeah, you could say that. So if you really look at that for the out of hospital kind of claims, when you go to a GP, a specialist, 99% of that goes straight through automated. It doesn't even get touched by a person. Because yes, technology has allowed us to move into that world where the submission of the claim, the adjudication and the outcome and the payment is that seamless. So that's a significant efficiency gain that obviously also improves the experience of you as the member or patient, but also of the provider themselves, because then doing business with us makes sense for us, both at the scale and the efficiency that we play back to them in how they interact with our services. So that is quite significant. But we also have made strides in the hospital space. It's a much more complex space because you walk in there thinking you've got this condition and 2 days later they pick up other things, they extend your stay. So there's quite a lot of more updates and complexities in our hospital claims work.
What are you doing in that space? Because there's a lot of frustration when it comes to hospital claims and sometimes misunderstanding of what should be happening and the obligations of either party.
So, I mean, at the center of everything that we do, we always obviously want to drive the health outcomes. So we allow for this, and we have never taken the clinician out of the picture. They still are the one in charge of your health. So if you get in there thinking you are there for something and the clinician picks up something, we allow for those updates. But the system also allows for those to happen automatically, and also the automated outcomes on our side to update the pre-authorization as a result, so that obviously your claim is taken care of in the most appropriate way. It is a space that has also different challenges in how we structured. One big one is that you do have specialists and doctors in hospitals. That may be a network hospital in our world, right? A network hospital is someone that we have agreed with what rates we're going to pay at. But that specialist may actually not be contracted just like the hospital, and you end up with this incongruency.
Because they've got a different deal.
Yeah. So now you walk in there, we told you this is the hospital to go to Morningside and your claim will be taken care of, and next thing you've got a co-payment.
So how does the technology, the data that you use, resolve that?
So the best thing that we have tried to sort of do and resolve is been trying to work on what we call network congruency, where we're trying to understand this network of all these different specialists and where they generally practice at based on our claims history, because we can see that Dr. Thembekile historically submitted a claim for a procedure that was done in this hospital, and we try to start bridging that gap so that the experience of our patient, because the patient for us is at the center of this entire thing. In the future, we reduce that gap by driving more congruency from the network perspective. But we've got other supplementary products because we are a vertically integrated healthcare organization, not just medical aid.
What are those?
So GAP is one of them. And in this kind of a context, because we again have the history of what has been our customers' experience of shortfall payments in the past. How can we structure something that is more cost-effective, data-driven, to bridge those? Because we can predict your hospitalization rate and which people we think are going to end up in hospital tomorrow, next year, and so forth. And based on their benefits and for the conditions that they're likely to end up there for, what will be their experience?
You're weighing us, you've got us wearing watches, and that's part of it, right? We think of it as an everyday thing, but those smart watches, it's incredible to think that those are now part of a tool used for healthcare.
Definitely. I mean, ideally, you want to keep someone in a state of wellness. So if you look at the continuum of healthcare, the ideal state is wellness up to the palliative care, right? And in between, you've got you going to a primary care, disease management, chronic, and even hospitalization. So you want to move people as far backwards as possible. And those smartwatches allow us to be more proactive with how we understand your health and the risk, because it's all about understanding the risk better and stratifying it and managing it before it manifests into a hospitalization or even death. Yeah.
What about the concern, though, and some people have said this, that you guys are to an extent over-monitoring us using these tools?
I think, I mean, it's not just in the healthcare space. I think when we think about AI in the context of ethical practices, the essence of it all, or what's at the center of it all, is trust. I think people are asking themselves a question of whether they can trust how we carry ourselves, how we discharge our duties.
How reliable is the data? How trustworthy are the people on the other side reading the data?
Yeah, and the privacy. So that requires all organizations to actually then demonstrate the comprehensiveness of their governance policies with how they carry out AI practices. So that includes the AI systems that you build, the algorithms or formulas in simpler terms that you use, how you manage the data privacy elements, and be able to report on that and demonstrate that, and be able to also show that there are gaps here and what are you doing to address them, because that also encourages oversight from people in boards who may not necessarily have the technical ability when you simplify it for them to say, this is where we are.
Because you also now have to worry. You've always, to a degree, had to, but there are other steps you now have to take for the protection of personal information, because back in the day, I'd have to break into your office to steal a contract, steal a file. But now, with technology, including AI, it's become easier.
It's become easier, more sophisticated, and growing at a extremely fast paced because, I mean, the reason we ended up where we've ended up is that the whole digital age has created explosion of digital devices that are interconnected.
Pros
right?
and cons.
Yeah, and for every time you connect an additional device or data point, you have created an opportunity for interception and exposure. So you can see how exponentially that risk is going. But equally, using AI to pick up those behaviors from the people on the other side that are trying to hack you is quite important. And the tricky part is most of AI historically has been built by trying to understand what people have done in the past and predict what they're going to do. But this world works differently. Fraudsters tries to come up with something new. So history doesn't necessarily help you because...
So as you innovate, they are also innovating.
I mean, there are people who've got head offices like these ones that wake up to go do this funded organizations, right?
And then on innovation, do you find that as AfroCentric Group, you are required to innovate, or do you basically let the industry set the tone for what you need to implement?
We are required to innovate. I think one thing about AI and why we all think of it as pervasive in the way we do is that, it touches every facet of our lives and it needs to drive improvement in outcomes and efficiencies and innovation itself. So we have to, otherwise we ourselves won't be sustainable. The industry has not been growing at a very fast pace. So how do you keep that sustainability going? How do you grow? I mean, we have grown. I mean, 3 years ago, we had 3.7 million lives. So we are one of the few that have grown in a very difficult market.
And what do you think people are drawn to that sort of innovation and the introduction of new ways of doing things, especially in healthcare, given the sensitivities?
It's when it's personalization and thinking of them beyond just being a number or a health client, but seeing Thembekile as Thembekile in his entirety, right? So firstly, our vertical integration and bringing some of the other entities within the AfroCentric Group, be it even on the pharmacy side, like I earlier mentioned, helps us understand Thembekile much broader. If you look at our current or recent acquisition by Sanlam, that even brings us closer to having a fuller picture of our client base because, I mean, they are the largest non-banking financial services organization in the continent with over 20 million clients. So the overlap of that, we actually now know where more than half of your money is going.
So what you're describing to me is a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
So you know how healthy I am, how much money I've got, and what I will need to help me through.
Yeah. What are you spending on your car insurance because they own Santa My Way and so forth, your life, your retirement, your funeral policy, and you can actually even make the experience easy for you. So if you were to take a life policy today, if you are a med scheme or AfroCentric client, why do you need to go through underwriting if I've got that health data?
At this rate, you might as well arrange our marriages.
I think so. We'll look into that as the next innovation area.
As an extra product. Because let's talk about the hub that's run by one of your subsidiaries, where what it does is it enables faster response dispensing, in fact, when it comes to chronic medication scripts. How does that work?
Definitely. So one of AfroCentric subsidiaries, Pharmacy Direct, really has this hub in Centurion that has a big robot. You can call it robotic process automation process. And we're able to dispense about 9,000 chronic scripts daily. We've got a capacity to do 16, so that's 180,000 a month for our members or chronic population of our membership. And what really that has allowed us to do, firstly, the reduced dispensing fee, because now, obviously, most of that effort is automated that would have been done by a pharmacist. And now their role is now elevated to being the one that looks after the patient and also coordinating any complexities between that and the provider. But the great outcomes, because I always like focusing on outcomes, is all good, but to say what is the value,
right,
is that we have reduced the throughput or the amount of time it takes us to get a script to our patients from an average of 5 to 7 days to just under 2 days. So that's over 50%. And this happens on a 28-day cycle. So that allows us to ensure that there's never a break in your chronic medication wherever you are.
Which is crucial when you consider the seriousness of some of those conditions.
Yes. I mean, most of these conditions, the minute there's non-adherence, it's easy for someone to revert back. So again, it improves the health outcomes when the adherence is high.
The hub is in Centurion, but it's people right across the country who benefit, right?
Yes. We get these scripts to some of the weirdest addresses in the most rural of South Africa. Yes.
And in terms of artificial intelligence itself, what are you relying on to make sure that the hub is able to keep up with the volume from the user side and ultimately meet what you had set out to achieve when it was developed?
Yeah, so one is the integration into our main med scheme business, which is where you would have the understanding of the chronic population and making sure that that data is integrated into this app so that obviously there's accuracy in the medication that gets dispensed. And obviously the hub has been customized to understand whether the medication needs to be at a particular temperature. It looks at the family profile, not just Thembekile, but the other dependents in Thembekile's policy to ensure that if we need to package it, there's that consolidation and the script comes through as one. And then obviously that improves your experience. You don't have Thembekile and the other three dependents that are all calling us and asking where my medication is, right?
And then in terms of accuracy and safety, because you made those 2 points, does it work perfectly?
Yes, we definitely we audit and have a look at that. We've got 99.98% service level outcomes when it comes to those factors, yes.
So for those remaining people, how quickly can their issues be resolved? So where there are issues?
Yes. So I mean, as you know, there will be issues just like in anything else, but that is where AI has allowed us to evolve the role of pharmacists that used to sit and pack medicine. I mean, who goes to school for 4 years as a pharmacist to come back and pack medicine, right? So now their role becomes understanding those exceptions, building those relationships with the people affected and the provider, and ensuring that that gets resolved quicker because they also have the capacity to address those exceptions instead of focusing on packing the medicine. So that is how AI actually has enabled even more human touch experience. So I always say healthcare needs AI because it needs the human touch. We are not taking the human touch, but we are amplifying it.
Well, that's a huge relief to all the humans in the system.
Yes.
And then lastly, where to next for the group in terms of what you are aiming to do to make life easier for everyone who relies on the ecosystem that you've built and are building in the space?
Yeah. I think the bigger challenge for us is extending beyond our current client base and recognizing the need to play a role in the balance of the 60 million that don't enjoy cover. And we've got some few partnerships. I mean, our automated robotics business that automates dispensary of medication. We actually even provide that service to government for the CCMD program, the HIV program, and we distribute 1.4 million scripts in 6 provinces. So that obviously has also contributed significantly to how obviously the scourge of HIV and even other chronic diseases have been managed. So it's looking for those partnership opportunities beyond just the private sector focus on medical aid. So we see that happening quite a lot. But from an AI and technology perspective, I think there's a lot happening, particularly around virtual screening, which I think really allows you to employ technologies such as your facial recognition, few seconds scan, and we can actually tell you quite a lot about your state of health. That in a country where there's 92% penetration of mobile phones, you know, you can easily get a very good view of the health risk at a population level beyond just the medical aid members. And that can enable the system to say, where can we put certain kind of interventions, be it from primary care and other facilities, to actually be more optimal with how we spend our resources. I mean, we all talk about how we can't afford things like NHI, right? So we need to be smart.
Smart, and we want to save money. So brings me to my next question. Sounds great. Anything that sounds too good to be true costs money. Are we going to have to foot the bill, basically, for this innovation at the user end?
Not really. Actually, you should see the opposite, because the innovation is only as good as in the long run it drives cost optimization and makes it cheaper. So take things like your virtual care when you consult with your doctor over the phone. Firstly, it means you can call Dr. Vukosi, who's from Limpopo, somewhere in Limpopo, if he's apparently the best doctor for a particular condition. Whereas historically, we're going to need to drive there and cost you money, and they're also actually going to charge you more. Whereas a virtual consultation is actually much cheaper.
Right.
So actually, this one of the key outcomes is us being able to demonstrate to say the cost of care has went down because of these innovations. So it should cost you less. Otherwise, we have failed.
And cost you less, otherwise it has failed. How do we make sure that everyone who's involved in the system is skilled enough and that there's a constant upskilling, because that's what it requires, does it not, of everyone in the ecosystem?
Very, very true, especially in a system where if you look at the South African healthcare system, the average age of a GP and clinician, it's you'll be scary on the 50 side. So much older than you and I, Thembekile.
Speak for yourself.
So I mean, getting those people skilled from a digital and even data perspective, and working with these tools so that it's all seamless and they are empowered to give better diagnosis, because we are able to make data available for them to understand the client better and the client's history, is quite key in that skilling. But even for the patient, because the ideal state, you want the patient to eventually also be empowered to take ownership of their own health in an ideal state. So this should not leave everyone behind. It shouldn't be about the AfroCentric people and our digital transformation program, but it's all the players in the ecosystem, the government. I mean, it's a highly regulated environment, and they need to understand how regulation doesn't become a blocker, but it actually enhances and supports this journey.
Vukosi, really good to speak to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Thembekile.
That was Vukosi Sambo, the head of data and AI at the AfroCentric Group. You've been watching another Impact Talk with me, Thembekile Mrototo. See you soon.